Hi, my name is Zach Nergy. I'm a sophomore at Indiana University, and I'm currently in the Sparta at War class. This is my final project. I'm doing my project on the video game made by Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It's an RPG game set in ancient Greece at the time of the Peloponnesian War, and I think it offers a very interesting take on ancient Greece as a whole. Not necessarily the most historically accurate, as I'm sure you'll see, but it has a lot of really interesting portrayals of certain historical figures and certain historical events and certain ancient sites. So I think it's definitely worth looking into. And Ubisoft has done their research in a lot of other games they've done. They are famous for putting a lot of detail into their work, and yeah, let's just dive right into it. So the first thing that I'd like to cover in terms of what this game talks about is its portrayal of Leonidas, obviously the king of the Spartans. We learned a lot about him in this class, and how he's portrayed in this game. So one of the first scenes that we can look at is him meeting with the Oracle at Delphi. So yeah, I'll just roll a clip from the game, and then I'll come back to discuss it.
All of this talk of the Pythia, I do not care what she says.
Enough! We have grown tired of your insolent tongue. Sparta will not go to war. The Pythia has spoken.
Pythia says what you tell her to say. She has been your puppet for far too long. The time has come to cut her strings.
Oh, Leonidas, the days of heroes are over. You think your blood makes you special? If we opened your veins, it would spill to the ground and disappear through the cracks. You are no one.
You are more than welcome to find out.
Your fate is sealed, son of the lion. Xerxes will unite us. He will bring order to chaos.
Defy the Pythia and everyone you love. Everything you stand for will perish.
Gather the men.
My king?
Xerxes wants Sparta. She'll have to go through me.
So that, obviously, despite being a very cool and very dramatic scene to set the stage for the events that happen in the game, was not historically accurate, at least according to the accounts that we have of how Spartan interaction with the Oracle, or the Pythia as the game refers to her, would have been. So, number one, the Spartans, according to ancient sources, according to Herodotus, were always very pious, and they were very respectful of things like tradition and also of the word of the Oracle. So specifically, the conduct that Leonidas seems to show in this cutscene does not seem to be respectful of the Oracle, or to heed her advice at all, as you can see him storming out at the end there. And not only that, but the sentiment that the Oracle is giving to Leonidas is also completely incongruent from what we learned about in the class. So, for example, it seems that she's almost accepted that Xerxes will come and take over Greece, and she's discouraging him from going and fighting, say like, no, Xerxes is already taking over, he's already won, just accept it. When in reality, the Oracle actually gave a prophecy saying that Sparta could be saved, but it would require the death of one of the Spartan kings, as you can see in the quote from Herodotus up in the corner there. I think it's obviously dramatizing the scene to make it more appealing and entertaining. But I would say that the actions of both Leonidas and the Oracle in this scene are not representative of how historically they would have been in these contexts. So one of the early events that you actually play as in the game is you actually get to play as Leonidas in the Battle of Thermopylae. specifically like earlier on, but also you see footage from what happens when the Spartans are eventually surrounded by the Persians as they go through the mountain pass. But what's interesting to me is the portrayal of Leonidas during this battle, specifically how he's fighting, in addition to how the rest of the Spartans are fighting. So before I jump into that, I'll roll a clip from the game, from one of the cutscenes, and then we'll go into it.
Spartans! Every breath that you have taken has led you to this moment. Every drop of blood, sweat, and tear, all of it has led to where you stand right now. The Persians come to make slaves of us all. I have a better idea. I say we drench the gods with their blood! What say you, Spartans? For our sons! For our daughters! For Sparta!
So I think clearly you can see here where the inspiration was drawn for a fight scene such as this being portrayed in the game. I mean, there's clear influences from 300 and other similar action-oriented portrayals of Spartan warriors in this particular scene. But I don't want to let that distract you from some of the historical accuracies and some of the things that this battle got right. So one thing that it has over 300 is the gear of the Spartan combatants seems to be mostly historically accurate, according to accounts that we have from Plutarch and Xenophon and Herodotus about the types of equipment and gear that was available to Greeks, specifically Spartans at the time. The Spartan soldiers are wearing bronze chest plates, they have greaves, they have helmets. They're not just wearing loincloths and going shirtless like they were in 300. They have helmets. And even their equipment, they're not just using swords, they're using swords, shields, spears, all of which is accurate to how a hoplite phalanx would have fought at that time, in that time period. Additionally, you can see this in the cutscene, not as much in the actual gameplay, but in the cutscene, you see the Spartan phalanx line up in formation. You know, the men are standing shoulder to shoulder, similarly to how they would have in actual historical battles. Although Leonidas does come out and stand on the front. While it's true that Spartans, even the kings, usually did fight in battles, they usually weren't at like the very, very front. However, it's nice to see that they were actually lined up in the phalanx in the cutscene. Now, once the gameplay starts rolling, as I'm sure you can see right now, the soldiers just split off into more one-on-one fights, and that's not as historically accurate. But at least in the cutscene, that much is accurate, and that's one positive aspect about the portrayal of the Battle of Thermopylae here. So additionally up ahead here, we're going to actually watch the aftermath of this particular battle at Thermopylae, the end of this day of fighting. Specifically, we're going to watch up ahead Leonidas interrogating a Persian soldier who tells him that the Persians have discovered the pass through the mountains that are going to surround them, which according to what we learned in the class is not how the Spartans found out. They found out by having scouts in the pass who saw the Persians coming. But this is at least accurate in the sense that it shows that the Spartans knew the Persians were coming to surround them, and they decided that they would just stay and have like a last stand anyways.
We are betrayed, my king. Xerxes knows of the path behind the mountain. They are coming.
By dawn, we will be completely surrounded.
We are Spartans. When are we not?
Spartans. That word will mean nothing when Xerxes wipes your bloodline from the face of the...
Today was a day the Persians will never forget. Tomorrow is a day the world will remember.
But yeah, so details withholding. That's a more action-oriented way, a very dramatic way to show that scene. That is somewhat historically accurate. The Spartans did know that the Persians were on their way, and that if they stayed, they would die, and they chose to hold out either way. But yeah, so that is the Battle of Thermopylae. And next, it jumps a couple years because the rest of the game takes place in the Peloponnesian War. This is more of like a flashback. So next, I'm going to take a look at the introduction of the main characters. There's two playable characters in the game, Cassandra and Alexios. They're brother and sister, but you choose which one to play at the beginning of the game. And this is a flashback that basically shows a very common trope in Spartan media that stems from, according to Plutarch, a Lycurgan tradition that stems from the Lycurgan reforms in Spartan society. And yeah, we're just going to take a look at it and then examine the accuracies and inaccuracies afterwards.
The Oracle has spoken! To prevent Sparta's fall, the child must fall first.
You can't let this happen! Please, he'll do no harm. He'll help us. He will lead us.
Silence!
Murderer! She has
Dance her over!
Pay for her dishonor, for the life she has snuffed. She is not Spartan, Nikolaos.
Don't listen! Nikolaos! Don't listen! No! Nikolaos! Nikolaos, look at me! Look at me, Nikolaos! Don't! Don't listen!
Your blood is tainted. Rid yourself of this poison.
Father!
For Sparta!
Father!
No, my baby! Cassandra! Cassandra!
So yeah, as we just saw in the last scene, in addition to portraying the Spartans as brave and honorable and great soldiers in the Battle of Thermopylae, the game also portrays them as relatively brutal, and it includes a scene that has the discarding of two children, the main character that you choose and their sibling. Depending on which one you choose, the rules are reversed. But yeah, basically it shows the discarding of children that was, according to Plutarch, a practice in Sparta, as you can see in the citation right there. It talks about how Spartan men were supposed to bring their children to an elder to be examined, and if the child was deemed fit and healthy, then they were, brought back to Sparta and raised and reared, depending on their gender. But if they were unfit, they were discarded, and this shows that practice. It's also worth noting that in the game, the child is being sacrificed to fulfill a prophecy, which is not usually the reason that children were sacrificed. They were sacrificed because they were sickly or unfit. However, I think that they added this into the game to further portray Spartan piety and show that Spartans took tradition and Greek spirituality, and with the exception of the earlier Leonidas scene, a dedication to the oracle, and belief in the prophecies very seriously. So the majority of the game actually takes place in 422 BC, which is actually 1 year before the first piece of the Peloponnesian War between Sparta and Athens. And as such, it plays a vital, pivotal role in the storyline, and also a major mechanic of the game. So in the game, each region at the start of the game is actually controlled by either Sparta or Athens, and you can do side missions and quests in each of these regions to unlock they're called conquest battles, and then you can choose which side to fight for. You can either help the defenders keep the territory, or you can help the attackers take it over. So you actually, through your actions, can help shape which way the war goes, which obviously is not necessarily congruent with history, given that we do know that the Peloponnesian War ended a certain way, and a peace was made after Brasidas basically crippled Athens' food supply, and we know how the war ended. But in this game, for the purposes of gameplay, your actions can actually influence who controls what territory and who's winning, and so on and so forth. But yeah, speaking of Brasidas in the game, so he is a character that your player character actually regularly interacts with, and you go on multiple missions with him. He is portrayed as much more of a brigand than a fighter than the wordsmith that he was, according to the accounts we have from Herodotus. But he does go and cut off the Athenian food supply at Amphipolis, and then he also does actually die later in the game. Spoiler alert. So at least that part is historically accurate. You also briefly meet Archidamus, the Spartan king Archidamus, who was the king at the time of the Peloponnesian War. So one fact about the game is that it actually takes place in a condensed version of Greece. The map is a smaller version where they compacted everything together. And because of that, there's actually a lot of locations that you can visit in the game world, and that includes the city of Sparta. As you can see in this screenshot, buildings that would have been in Sparta in real life, such as the communal mess or Spartan housing or even barracks, are present in the city, as are your average Spartan dwellers, as they're walking along doing their daily activities, chores, what have you. Additionally, they have small villages situated throughout the rest of Laconia as well, and Sparta controls that area in Messenia as well, as you can see in this screenshot. One point of controversy was actually how the game portrayed Spartan women, or just women in general. Obviously, you can play as a woman as the protagonist, going around as a mercenary, which is the occupation that your main character has. Additionally, you'll come across female bandits, mercenaries, even female soldiers. There are a few Spartan and Athenian soldiers which are female, which, according to our sources, would not be historically accurate, but makes sense given the tastes of modern day audiences, I would say. One thing that the game actually gets right, though, about Spartan women is the fact that they can be seen exercising within the city of Sparta. And this is probably a reference to the Lycurgan reforms that, according to Xenophon, mandated that women should exercise, primarily to produce robust children, but it was still a practice that was promoted nonetheless, and that's present in the game. So yeah, that's my project on Assassin's Creed Odyssey, looking at various aspects of it and its portrayal of the Spartan people. It mostly tries to portray Spartans as, brave and courageous, but also sometimes cruel. I think that that's a somewhat fair portrayal of the Spartans, given what we learned in the class. They portray certain things very accurately. In the case of the Spartan women exercising, obviously that's a very obscure detail. There's a lot of research into that. But then at the same time, they also have some glaring inaccuracies for the sake of, I would say, creative liberty and adding fun factor. This is a game. It has to entice players. And I'm sure that having a phalanx battle, while more historically accurate, wouldn't be as cool as having the spinning and twirling and 300 style fights that you saw earlier in the video. Additionally, some liberties have been made or taken to appeal to modern day audiences, which I think is fine. This is a modern medium. It should reflect the time that it was made in as much as the time it's trying to represent. It doesn't brand itself as complete historical fact, and it's a fun game. I can vouch for that myself. So yeah, I think that this game does well to at least make people aware of things that could have happened in Sparta, even if it's not portraying these in the most accurate of ways. It's at least it's getting some things right, and it's making people aware, potentially helping them to want to learn more about this very fascinating culture.